There we go. Bye, Pac-Man. Oh. Hey there. Welcome to The Horrible Show, the editorial video game podcast from HorribleNight.com. It is Tuesday, April 30th, 2013. I'm your host, Justin Lacey. Tonight we got a two-man show, and joining me from a raucous Berlin is Ethan Moses.
Hey, how's it going?
What's going on over there?
I guess something called May Day, or also called the International Workers' Day, which was actually advertised to me as like a really nice day where there's all kinds of booths out and stuff like that, and all kinds of festivals. And then I guess at like 6 p.m. the rioters come out, so they come out and they set things on fire. And then I did a little bit of research on this and realized that the festival aspect of it was put into place to prevent people from rioting too much.
Why did they like to riot?
Yeah, I guess. Well, we were going to go out tonight, and then Aubrey and I kind of talked about it. We're like, I don't know. We're not the rioting type. We're from the Midwest. We're not really sure how we would deal with that kind of stuff. So I guess the neo-Nazis come out and they make kind of a little spectacle of things, and all the right-wing people come out, and then all the left. And that's something I don't want to have anything to do with. So, but I heard that a protective robot might be in the midst of everything. So
I saw him. I saw his post on Facebook. Did he make the trip, or is he being rebuilt?
Apparently, Safety Bot is being reassembled. Whether or not he's assembled in time for the festivities, I'm not sure. But the one thing that gets to the core of Safety Bot is to know that people, especially innocent people, may be unsafe. So we'll just see what happens tomorrow.
That's kind of crazy. You mentioned being from the Midwest. I have been near a riot in the Midwest, so I'm guessing that in addition to whatever sociological or political motivations that festival has, I bet women's college basketball is also involved. If my experiences have any truth behind them.
I was gonna say there's I don't know. It's more of a long-term type rioting effect, though. I'm sure that there's at least 5 people involved in the riots that are just really passionate about women's basketball. So hopefully I'll find those guys and go from there.
What else is going on as far as maybe in video games? What's got your attention?
Oh man, well, I mean, I know what's going to have my attention tomorrow.
You're so distracted by the promise of a blood dragon.
I can't even play like other games. I'm just looking so forward to that game and kind of checking on Metacritic, and I kind of feel like, I don't know why, but like maybe Blood Dragon's a little bit of my baby now. Like I had nothing to do with the production of that.
I feel it was made for you. So
it was made for me, and so like it's almost like I take offense when people rate it low, and so I'm checking Metacritic, and I'm sure like the people behind Blood Dragon and myself are both like, it's almost like a Five Goes West type situation. Well, there's a moon, they're looking at the moon, and I'm looking at the same moon, but we're also looking at the Metacritic scores. But it's doing better than I thought it was going to. Like I really thought people were going to come out and just rip it apart for the sake of ripping it apart, but everyone seems to have said, hey, it's a gamey game, and it's fun, and why not? And actually, again, we talked a little bit before the show, but the precedent that Blood Dragon is setting is probably more important than the game itself, though the game is going to kick ass, and we kind of talked about it today as well, that I'm planning on streaming that game, planning on doing a playthrough of the game completely, kind of like in the way I did with Resident Evil 6, but I think I'm going to be a little bit more entertained by this one, so we'll see how that goes.
I will play the game myself for my own entertainment, and I expect high marks, but I will also... I can't wait to watch you be entertained by it. There's a special draw to that. That was a mushy moment. I apologize. Sorry, that got was right up there.
Speaking of being entertained, actually, I wanted to totally give you guys props for forcing me, or not forcing me, but actually attracting me to watching a fighting game about DC comic book characters that I could give a flying fuck about. Like DC to me,
I'm the
other
same
than
way.
Batman, like it just means nothing to me. But that was a fun stream on. Was it what Sundays when you guys did that, wasn't it?
Yeah, not 2 weeks ago, Sunday. Yeah,
previous Sunday. And I came into it, and people were kind of giving Aquaman hell, and we kind of discussed this. And Aquaman's kind of one of those characters that I don't know. I kind of feel bad for the guy. He's got pretty cool powers. It's just like maybe
hangs out with fish all day, man. Yeah.
Well, and that's that's sort of a strange thing for him. But I saw his those were special moves that involved him harpooning somebody with a trident and then holding them up like a cocktail wiener, and then like a shark just comes bursting through and takes a big bite out of them. And I was like, holy shit, that was really awesome.
That was a turning point for us, I think. That super move combined with the fact that I was finally learning how to actually execute moves, because I'm not a good fighting game player, and so learning on the fly during a live stream, that was a new experience for me. I've we play a lot of games we're kind of familiar with before on live streams, but learning a game while actually trying to make progress through that was kind of interesting. But I mean, Aquaman's one of the best characters in that game. He's fun as hell to play, and that shark bite scene is surprisingly satisfying. So
he seemed a little bit. I think somebody mentioned it in chat. He was a little bit overpowered, wasn't he? I mean, he was filming those trident shots out really quick. I mean, I'm no fighting game expert, but he looked like he was pretty dominant in that situation. So it was kind of sad to see him go.
Yeah, I felt really in control with him, and then the weapons with Wonder Woman. There was just something about the little extra weapons on top of their superpowers. But I honestly started that section hoping we would just be ripping on Aquaman the entire time, but he shut us up until later in the game, which you'll see. So right now I'm putting up all the playthrough videos, 2 chapters at a time, up on our Facebook page. On our YouTube page. And so part 2 is up there now. It's going to be a 6-part video. But later, Aquaman shows up, brings his army out of the ocean on these giant crawfish insect looking things. And I don't know, it was you expect I expected sea creatures and not big shellfish. And it was a hilarious, we couldn't, it was a big dramatic the armies are battling kind of moment, and we lost it at that point. So that game, I mean, the story mode is whether you want to play it or watch it, I think it's definitely entertaining. It is, and you say, yeah, I'm not a big fan of fighting games, and I don't like watching fighting games, but this is a superhero comic book game. It just happens to have fights in between. What'd you think of, I don't know how much you've watched, but did you notice the QuickTime events?
They confused me, and I'm not sure if what I was seeing were the QuickTime events or not, because suddenly the superhero would look at the camera. Is that the right one that we were talking about, where they would just suddenly look at the camera and say justice or something along those lines, and it was like what's going on? And then I think that led to power moves or whatnot. But no, if there was something different, I completely missed those.
Yeah, there were there were a lot of scenes where they would shift the perspective almost third person over the shoulder of your character, and the other enemy would be approaching you in some way, and you basically have to fend them off by doing QuickTime events. Joker throws a bunch of cards at them that are explosive cards, and Superman has to use his I-beam. But the thing about the Superman scene, as we found out, was in the Superman scene, this dude is chucking cars at you, and you're just blowing the cars up with your heat vision or whatever. But he's pulling cars out of traffic, so there's still people in these cars, and you are destroying them, and you never acknowledge it. Are
you good Superman or bad Superman?
You're good Superman. So it was
not for long.
It was a big moral dilemma. We just killed 40 people, assuming there was only a driver in the car. So,
well, maybe he shook them out before he threw them, though. He was a villain.
We kept trying to find it out, and
there was no, they were dead. Oh God.
But
that's always bad. It's always bad.
Yeah. So we hate the game for that one reason. No, I don't care.
Oh yeah.
But I was the same way. That I could care less about DC comic characters, but Josh has a solid background, so we're trying, like, Josh and I have gotten away from this, but I do, like, when we can do, like, a tandem stream like that, I think we'll try to do that more often, and this one just kind of played in that wheelhouse, so hopefully... we talked about maybe doing the same thing for the Mortal Kombat story, and he seems somewhat interested, so... and that story's pretty good, too. I don't know how much you care, but I have been completely obsessed with Rob Zombie lately.
Rob Zombie the musician, or Rob Zombie the
both,
film director?
Because he managed to, so his new movie, Lords of Salem's out. I still haven't seen it, but I've been laughing at all of basically the retweets that he's been posting on Twitter from people that are like talking up the movie and saying how twisted it is. And did you ever see House of Thousand Corpses or The Devil's Rejects?
I saw House of Thousand Corpses.
The Devil's Reject is I'm assuming this movie is kind of like that, and it's just like kind of a much more psychological, twisted horror film, but also kind of straightforward. Not a lot of supernatural stuff going on, just evil, twisted people and crazy people. But so I'm really curious to go see that movie, but I can't talk myself into seeing it in theaters. It just doesn't seem like a theater experience. I kind of want that on the small screen when, I'm not going to drag somebody to see it, but I know I'd love it. So
his movies, and I remember we watched House of a Thousand Corpses in college, and I actually watched it multiple times. So there's almost like a feeling of, and I feel like this way with Clive Barker films sometimes too, is that you almost feel a little bit dirty watching them, because they're enjoyable, but the situations that are involved within those movies are just so weird and just like you said, twisted. And I feel like if I was in a movie theater, it's like watching pornography in movie theaters. Like there was a time where people went to movie theaters and watched pornography, and I cannot imagine that time. And I think there will be a time where people will look back and they'll say, "Oh my God, you watched Rob Zombie movies?" It's not even something that people do anymore.
Yeah, he's everything he releases is a Rob Zombie film. Like he has some cred behind it. It's just. But at the same time, here we are in 2013, and he's like, so he also released an album like last week or 2 weeks ago, and it had nothing to do with the movie. It was just his next Rob Zombie album, and I was just thinking, like, as I got into Rob Zombie, and fans got into Rob Zombie and White Zombie because he's got that hard, dark edge to him, and now that he's like that the character still exists in 2013 just fascinates me, and he's just fun now, kind of capitalized by the fact that he did a cover of We're an American Band on his new album, and I'm not sure if it's a good song or a good cover, but it's just in concept it's fucking brilliant, because he's kind of like an Only in America type of guy, and I love the fact that he is his character, and apparently he puts on a really entertaining show, regardless of what you think of the music. But I don't know. I've been watching his videos again, and it's fun. It's not like I don't like it because it makes me I'm like into heavy music or dark music or anything like that. No, it's just fun for whatever reason.
Well, he's got that. I don't know. He's got that Alice Cooper kind of vibe, and that that characterization, but also the show. Man, I saw him at Ozfest back. Ooh, man!
You went to an Ozfest?
I went to an Ozfest when I was a young tyke, and that show. As soon as Rob Zombie walked out, and he had the whole stage production, but probably not to the extremes that he would like on just his own tour, but he had enough cool stuff going on, and the sky erupted into just soil, just. Yeah, I mean, people went nuts during that time. We actually had to leave because it was kind of extreme, and we were young tykes, and it was quite the, quite the fucking show. But I don't know how long he can keep it up. And did you see the Halloween movies he did? That's what I'm always curious, because I hear people were pissed about those. I
like the first Halloween movie, but I don't hold any gravity to the originals by any means. I think he did 2 of them. And was really he was making them, 2 Michael Myers films. He was really trying to get into that character, not necessarily make a jump scare horror flick. It was just kind of more of like a psychological movie, like a look at crazy people. That's kind of what he does and not trying to make strong statement, but just like, here, this is kind of messed up, right? It's kind of more the feeling you get anytime you watch his stuff. But I don't know. I'm glad he's out there.
Yeah, definitely. We need Rob Zombie, especially in this day and age.
Then we mentioned a little bit ago that we played Monaco this weekend, 4-player. But before I get to that, I've been really interested in kind of the backstory of Monaco's development because it won a bunch of awards years ago. It actually became funded by the Indie Fund. This was like before Kickstarter was really getting going and that sort of thing. And just the fact that I found out that Monaco surpassed its investment. It had $100,000 invested into it. They made that money on pre-orders alone.
Yeah.
And you never know with a game that takes this long to come out, like especially kind of had the same thing around when Fez was released, and I would even say Retro City Rampage, these kind of labors of love from these developers. You don't really know what the end product's going to be, but I think even though at the time when we were playing, I didn't think we were playing Monaco the right way, and I'll get back to that, I think in the end we actually played it exactly the right way, which is Monaco isn't about the perfect heist. It's about, the absolute chaos. And I talked about this game a little bit yesterday with Cole, but I'm kind of curious. You and I haven't talked since we streamed for a couple hours and lived through the madness of our failed thievery attempts. But what'd you think of Monaco?
Yeah, I thought it was a really, really good time. It actually, it kind of was a throwback to, and this is going to be a really strange comparison, but I felt like I did when I played Mario Party back when it was fun to play Mario Party.
Yeah.
Just because it's just crazy shit going on, but outside of them being just kind of stupid, mini games, I felt like I was learning something new every time I played a level, and then we could carry that on. And I think that's like that is, and I didn't even. I saw Monaco, but I didn't, think like heist games to me, like I'm not really into that, But that is the perfect couch co-op game, perfect co-op game in general, because you can have I'm really serious with it. And actually, based on chat, they told us that we could probably be more serious about our run through, but you could also have like just a goofy good time, and it was really well balanced. And I'm curious about going back because I haven't had time to go back to it. But have you played it single player?
I played a little bit of single player before we streamed. I played like 3 missions, and honestly wasn't all that impressed with it. Again, but at that time I was approaching it from the aspect, I don't know why. I mean, I agree. I'm an idiot for expecting that we would play 4 players and kind of stop and think and plan out this perfect scenario and just like, kind of go, a corner at a time or a floor at a time on these big heist plans and try to just execute perfectly to our classes instead of just running around with chickens with their heads cut off. And it's I don't think that playing that way would necessarily be fun single player. I think you do want to try to go more stealth, but absolutely just embrace the chaos and the fact that no one really knows what they're doing, and because that was the most fun like online experience. That's the closest online experience I've had to a couch co-op experience, because we were all just in the moment, and I hope everybody gets to kind of play that with a group of close friends, because that's what it was meant for, and we love those types of games for sure.
No, definitely that's a game that play with buddies.
Yeah.
If you don't have any, we'll be your buddies. We'll play with you.
As far as Horrible Night goes, I have really been trying to think about how we've been covering news headlines. We've always been, that is not a priority for us, but at the same time, I'm following the headlines like every hour just because I'm kind of addicted to it. And what do I want to do with these? So I've always had these like news feeds that I promote on our Google Plus page, and used to do it through Google Reader when we were using that. But so I've started separating out our headlines posts, which our first one went up on Tuesday. But at the same time, I also have starting to do more gamer culture related posts on Mondays, which I think are a lot more fun. So kind of be on the lookout for. You'll get 2 heavy doses of headlines a week, and then my culture posting, just kind of a my games of the week type of post on Mondays, and just kind of really curious if people are enjoying any of the links that I'm sharing on that, and if they'd like to see, if they have anything else they'd like to see covered, because I cover the things that catch my attention and not necessarily are reflective necessarily of Ethan or anybody out there, but any feedback would be appreciated on those posts.
Yeah, and I don't agree with anything he posts. I just want everybody to know that. I go through those lists, and I always think this is something that I wouldn't like, but Justin's in charge, so we have to. But no, seriously, everybody communicate with what you want us to do, because if not, we'll do whatever we want. So
yeah, especially related to news, because it's easy. Like, I don't know, when the Grand Theft Auto 5 trailer comes out, we're not going to post that on our site, even though we'll watch it out of curiosity, and maybe we'll talk about it on the podcast. But we also know that you guys are interested in it, so I'm trying to find ways to kind of still get that stuff out to you guys, but still have our take, and also make sure we're covering what everybody's interested in. So, All right, tonight, in honor of Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, for I think the second horrible show in a row, we've kind of been focused around this game, but this is a big deal. This is a big deal to Ethan especially, but also I think the rest of the site can't wait to play this game. But it got me thinking, first of all, just I can't think of a game that approaches video game sandboxes in the way that Far Cry 3 and Blood Dragon have. Because basically, here you had Far Cry 3, which we kind of agreed was the epitome of sandbox games at this point. It's like the best you can get. And that, and probably Saints Row the Third right now. So they had this world that Far Cry 3 established, and it had its own rules, and then they just made a completely, a completely different, not a different game, like a new take on a new game within that rule set that still doesn't feel exactly like Far Cry 3. And I hope more game developers do that. If we hear about game developers building game engines and having to reuse them, but this was just the most creative use of hard work and building the Far Cry 3 systems that I could have imagined, and the fact that it's getting good reviews is pretty awesome. So I kind of want to look at the evolution of the sandbox games tonight and kind of see if we can't build our ultimate sandbox games. But before we do that, is there anything else you wanted to say about Blood Dragon?
Oh man, I don't know. I feel like maybe at this point I'll be talking about it too much. But I'm really excited. Again, I've mentioned the precedent, but the fact of the matter is that you spend all this time developing these engines, and you create a game like Far Cry 3, which does well. And where do you go from there? Do you lower the price, or do you offer something that's enough different that it can pull people in? Because I think people are going to play Blood Dragon. There's a lot of people I've seen that have said, Blood Dragon looks awesome, $15, standalone, which is genius. Game developers out there, listen up. Standalone people like that. People enjoy that. They don't have to commit to a bigger game. But the fact of the matter is that works to their advantage, because they're going to go back and play Far Cry 3. Because from all that I've read, and I'm sure this is the case, is Blood Dragon gives you a good taste of what you get from Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 is a more in-depth experience. It takes itself a little bit more seriously, but it's still pretty over the top. So I think it's gonna have kind of that funneling effect that people that play Far Cry 3 are gonna play Blood Dragon. People that first played Blood Dragon are gonna play Far Cry 3.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That is a model that,
why not?
Come on, dude.
It makes so much more sense than a lot of the DLC that's out there. That is just, you look at Saints Row the Third's kind of failed DLC, and that it just was so. It was just so run of the mill.
Passion. That's a big difference. But I was so disappointed because Saints Row 3 is a game that is all about passion, all about people saying, this is what we want to make, this is the kind of game we want to make, we don't care how anyone feels about it, this is what we want to do. And then the DLC was so forced and just so bland, and it's like, man, could you not outdo yourself, or did you just feel like this is enough and we've impressed the crowd? Whereas Far Cry 3 was a great game. I mean, one of my favorite experiences from 2012. But Blood Dragon is taking that experience and just molding it into something different. It still feels the same, but looks different enough and has a different attitude. And that just says to me that, okay, this is an experiment, not only in terms of DLC and expansions, but also, could we take this Blood Dragon universe, this character, and go someplace with it? Or this genre of not giving a fuck, could we do something with this? And I think you can. I think there's a lot of, Saints Row, I know a lot of people get pissed off about Saints Row 3 in terms of it, kind of going in that direction of just not really caring, and Saints Row 4 is going to be even more so, but people like that. I think people, we take ourselves serious all the time. I mean, I just beat BioShock Infinite, had a really good time with it, but it was a heavy game. I don't want a heavy game after heavy game after heavy game. We need people to come in and not try to impress us with stories. The one factor about Blood Dragon that people kept saying is turn your brain off, turn your brain off. Well, okay, I get it, but but unfortunately, video games have gotten in this era that we feel like we have to impress everybody's intellectual side, and you don't. And that's the thing about sandbox games. To kind of segue into what we're talking about tonight, is a sandbox game gives you that option of either digging in and being a part of the universe and being a part of the story, or just, for lack of a better word, just fuck off the whole time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what makes them so good. It can also be their downfall, but that is why those are such. It's not a genre, because you can have a sandbox first-person shooter, military game, but it's a genre in terms of, I feel like, the freedom and the application of the gameplay. Maybe it makes a little bit of sense. It's kind of tough to define genres at this point, but yeah, it's just sometimes people just want to screw around. People want to have fun, Well, why not? Let's let them.
I think you hit it on the head with what makes Blood Dragon stand out is the passion behind it, that is just kind of filtered through in the way they've marketed the game too. So I just, whoever greenlit that game, get that guy a raise, because this was I was trying to think of what else out there has been similar to this, especially in the open world games, and the last one I can think of was Undead Nightmare.
Absolutely.
They understood their game world and made something work within it, and I think Undead Nightmare was the biggest departure as far as like, here's some DLC. It's not canon. It's just kind of like, here's the characters and the landscape you're familiar with, but we're going to populate it with some crazy stuff. And Rockstar made that work. But so I wondered, like, it seems like Blood Dragon was that next step, and I really can't wait to see if this succeeds sales wise, like other people try to head in this direction rather than like I said, the vanilla DLC we have been getting. But before we build our ultimate sandbox, let's start from the beginning. And I always attribute sandbox and open world games to Grand Theft Auto, but even before the Grand Theft Auto games, are there any games you grew up with where you just remember you're playing the game, but you took a break and you're just kind of fucking off in the world and just trying to like tinker with it, and the world's kind of responding to you? Because before there were open world games, what were our sandboxes?
Man, that's a tough one. I have to say, and this is kind of a little bit different take on that, because the first game that I really tinkered with and screwed around and just kind of explored as much as I possibly could outside of the actual gameplay was probably SimCity. Now, SimCity is not a sandbox game. However, the app, you have the...
For sure.
You make your city and whatnot, but you also have, I remember, I really like to create the landscapes, and so I messed around with that a lot. So before you loaded the map, you created what you wanted. I played with that, and I liked the freedom of it, to the point that when I realized that there was actually like another game, and there was actually a game to it, like I was actually trying to succeed. It was almost like I was offended that I wanted to take my attention away and place it into something like, you want me to take this seriously, like managing a city? And eventually, as I grew up, obviously, as a young a young man, just messing around and creating big mountains and whatnot was fun. But then I grew into appreciating the non-sandbox side of sandbox games. But still, there's just that they're so distracting at times, and that's, to me, that's probably up until Grand Theft Auto 3, which was the first real sandbox game I got into. I can't really think of anything beforehand.
Yeah, that's a good example, and I think that's exactly what I want to tap into, is the games where it almost annoyed you to play the actual game. Like, I even have, I want to go board games for a second, but I had this old game, I think it was called, it wasn't Hero Quest, but it was kind of like one of those where you basically have this big mat and all your figures, and there's all the rules to actually play the game and move your characters tile by tile, and heck, you can relate this to a lot of board games. But I just like playing action figures with them, and it's just kind of that aspect within video games of like how we played with action figures. And SimCity's, I can't remember ever playing SimCity to win. It was just like, what can I get away with, or what can I do to like cause one of the natural disasters, or what terrible scenario can I recover from, or and that kind of thing. And a lot of that experimentation kind of bred my overall interest in games and game development, and understanding like, why am I not breaking this game by doing this, but some of them are just so strict, like that you have to like follow this really linear path. And when Grand Theft Auto kind of blew the doors off with its open world, it was kind of neat to kind of break these games. I actually go back, Ethan, I don't know if you saw this last week, but I did stream some Cubivore. I tracked down a copy of that, but and that's an evolution game. But before that, back on the Super Nintendo, there was a game called EVO: The Search for Eden, and that was, it was the same kind of evolutionary idea where you start off as like some amphibious creature in the ocean. It's a 2D game, and you're just eating the animals around you and growing up the food chain. But every like evolutionary step, you get to choose: do you want to upgrade your fins and swim faster? Or you want to upgrade your jaws and become more of a carnivore? And just, I remember never getting past like the third stage of that game, because I would just try the different combinations of stuff. That I rented that game time and time again just to never play the game. And that was the first game that hit me. I was like, I don't actually like this game, but I like what I can do in it. And then I think one of the more modern examples of I would relate that to is Spore. I don't think I ever played that game to play that game. I mean, we all played it for the creature creators.
And once you did play the game for that game, you realized it wasn't a good game.
Yeah,
it was a very shallow experience. But the very beginning stages and creating those monsters and going from there and kind of goofing around was the best part of it. I mean, and sometimes it happens with sandbox games is they introduce sandbox and then feeling like you have to be part of the story. Sometimes the story is not very strong, based entirely on the fact that it's sandbox.
It's really hard to make a good story around the sandbox, and I think that's that's why Rockstar stood out for so long, is because they've actually been able to introduce narratives into their open world games. But another kind of sandbox that we've been playing in recently has been Defiance. And I kind of wanted to take a look at the MMO sandboxes versus our kind of single player sandboxes, and because you look at some MMO worlds versus a Just Cause 2. Just Cause 2 doesn't really put any limits on the player, other than some laws of physics. I guess you can break most of them.
A few minor ones.
But when you really look at the limits you have in something like Defiance, you really can't do all that much, even though we have fun just kind of in a vehicular playground. And it's always, I don't feel like the open world genre can just be, it used to be that we would define it completely by Grand Theft Auto, and every game kind of played like that, but people are putting their own rule sets in for the better and for the worse. And sometimes restrictive open world games like Defiance are still fun for what they are.
Yeah, and the weird thing is now is the open world isn't enough for open world. You know what I'm saying? It's like Sandbox now. I mean, especially when you've got the Minecrafts and games like that. I mean, Sandbox now is I want to be able to build things. I want to be able to function within a society that is completely apart from the story. I want to be able to screw around with people. Whereas Defiance, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, like, oh man, look at what I can do here, and the limit keeps getting pushed to what you can do in a game. And so I've seen a lot of people who play, and even when I got into Minecraft for a long time, playing that, and that is an open world. That is
the sandbox.
That is the sandbox. And then going to another game, you almost feel kind of like bad about judging that game because I can't. What do you mean I can't build my own house? That's silly. Like that's really dumb.
That's kind of funny because I was just saying that you look at Just Cause 2 or Grand Theft Autos as there are no limits to this world. And then you look at, no, there actually are, because if you take the limits away, you get Minecraft. But even Minecraft has its limits. And I hadn't even thought of Minecraft as, it's the ultimate sandbox. It's kind of dumb, but it's a sandbox, but I don't relate it to those open world games.
And it's more like the sandbox in terms of you do two things in a sandbox. You build things, Minecraft, or you push people in the sand and screw around, which is your Just Cause, your Saints Row 3. You use the sand in ways that maybe you shouldn't use the sand. Sand gets in places maybe it shouldn't, but that's kind of the point of it, And then you got the kids that are building their little houses and stuff like that. And I fall into both those demographics, but you have to sacrifice one for the other at this point. Now, there's going to be a time in the future, and we'll probably talk about this more when we're talking about our ultimate sandbox, that the gameplay from a Just Cause 2 could be incorporated into a Minecraft, and I'm thinking about that's what excites me about the possibilities, because people were talking about we always talk about graphics when it comes to technology within gaming. And to me, I'm not as concerned with graphics because, graphics look good. They're always going to look good. They'll get more realistic, but it's going to be the mechanics. It's going to be the amount of things that you can do to a world. They've got all those. You've got the physics stuff that came out. You've got the Teslaization with the ATI. There's also some liquid type programming stuff coming in there.
There's some badass physics going on.
There's some big time physics, and that physics is not just happening. That physics is being created not just to be like a cutscene or just to be incorporated into the background in kind of a flat way, but that they're creating these things so that you can you can affect the world. So the water will flow this way, but if you blow a wall up, it's going to flow that way. And they are building us up into this point where we have absolute control over everything that happens within the game. But the unfortunate thing is, I also read an article where a lot of game developers have actually had to put a lot of money into games, a lot more money into games, because gamers troll the game so bad. Gamers, have that sandbox mentality. They want to break everything. And so now, not only do we want all this freedom, but we want all this freedom without any of the kinks, without any of the the quirks of programming and whatnot, and we don't want anything to look bad. So it's our demands are raising, but we want to, I don't know, we want to screw around, and I hate saying it, but like I want to be an idiot sometimes in these games, and I even kind of sometimes pick the imperfections of games, like a Skyrim or Fallout or whatnot, and be like, oh well, this kind of stuff is happening. That kind of stuff is happening because I'm being a douchebag. It has nothing to do necessarily with the game itself, but I'm pushing it to its limit, and that's what excites me about games in the future more so than anything, is the idea of the sandbox, the idea of the full control of the experience, and especially now when you're talking about user, created content and that kind of stuff. Dude, it's going to be a weird world we live in the next few years, and games are going to be that much more addicting because we're going to be getting things from the developers. We're going to have full control right out of the box, but then we're going to have people modding the games, and the mods actually not just being some secondary function or feature, but actually be a part of the game. It's going to be incredible, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, you kind of blew my mind for a bit there, because I was kind of headed down the path where I was going to say, what we've kind of maxed out with as open worlds without rules, and we actually, to make these games better, we're going to have to start restricting them, because that's what I kind of liked about Blood Dragon in Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 has its limits, but it knows what its limits are and has now found a second way to work within those limits to make a new game experience that obeys those rules, and I think that's awesome. But just that fact about, you're right, like people making games within Minecraft is just a whole other level of possibilities, and it's you look at, I think they had the PlayStation 4 demo you're talking about. And I'm kind of along the same lines that graphics aren't going to be the defining feature, but physics and density are going to be very important, because I think they showed their tech demo where they dropped like 1 million orbs into a world just to show, like, the system didn't crash with trying to calculate all these objects. Which you look at Grand Theft Auto 3 versus like an Assassin's Creed, as far as like the amount of the density to the world, and that's only going to get bigger and bigger and make the games more immersive in that regard. But these toys in our video game sandboxes are maturing to the point where you're going to have good game design around them, and also just be kind of, the designers have to be cognizant of what fits within their world. What rules do you want to break? I mean, the mod community in Skyrim is a hell of a lot of fun, but there are things you can do in that world that completely break that experience versus that are acceptable in something like Saints Row the Third. Like your highlight video of your dude falling out of the sky, and like doing that in Skyrim is probably technically possible, but they put restrictions on that kind of stuff for a reason, and I think that's what's going to kind of define what the difference between good and great open world games in the future is. Just the better open world games are going to be restricted in very smart ways, and you're not going to notice what those boundaries are, but you would notice if they weren't there, kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and that just goes back to the whole idea of an open world game. An open world is not enough for an open world game, but on that same token, an open world isn't enough either, because we've matured as gamers. We don't just want to be able to crash stuff into buildings. We have to have something supplementary there as well, and that is going to be the difference between a good sandbox game in the future and one that just is a sandbox. Is you got like your Gary's mod, which is a sandbox, but that's not, there's a demographic for that, but that demographic is not, going to sell a bunch of units. It's not going to push a bunch of units necessarily in games where people don't understand how to make that. They're just giving you the tools at that point, and most games can't get away with that. So.
Yeah, I mean, Verdian just threw out in chat the ultimate example of kind of where open worlds break for a lot of gamers versus people that want something different out of their open worlds with Second Life, and I'd even say PlayStation Home. It's just like, no, you're kind of missing the point with your open world there. I know there's an audience for it that likes to buy all those hats and buy a bunch of dicks in Second Life and use them for currency or whatever they do. I'm not judging that entire crowd, but I am.
Kind of.
Can you think of anything as far as... I think we just got to the tail end of this phase, and I don't think you can get away with it anymore, but like games that were open world for the sake of being open world that weren't any fun because of it. Does anything jump out?
This is going to be a weird example, because I think the open world gameplay was all the game had. Would be Red Faction, Guerrilla.
Yeah.
Because
and we both like that game, I think.
I like that game a lot, but the fact of the matter is that game, it lost its focus because of the open world. Now, it completely lost its focus when you get into Armageddon, because then it just closed everything off. But there were times in that game it was so big, there was so much land space. It wasn't fun because it wasn't tight. It wasn't dense, as you're kind of talking about.
How similar is that to Defiance, now that you think about it? Like, I feel like Defiance takes a lot from... it doesn't have the destructive stuff that made Red Faction awesome, but...
But, I mean, the thing with Defiance is one of the things that I pointed out when I did the Reflex was it can feel bland sometimes because it's so big, but there's not always stuff there, and that was the issue with Red Faction Guerrilla I always saw, is there's a lot of stuff here, but it almost got annoying to drive from point A to point B because there weren't things constantly going on. Now Defiance is trying to correct that by, there's going to be more random encounters happening and stuff like that. But again, we don't want, when we say open world, we don't want this just big barren desert that we drive over again. Like, it's just like with game length, it's you can't just put length into it. You can't just put the size of a map and think, oh, it's a big map and people are going to be satisfied. Now, looking at Just Cause 2, there was kind of something to do most everywhere you went, and it was so big that there were areas that weren't as exciting, but there were still exciting things to do within.
It was fun to get around.
It was fun to get around. It's not fun to get around. It was not fun to get around in Red Faction Armageddon.
In Defiance, it's fun to get around.
It's fun to get around, but I think after a while it won't be. You know what I mean? Like, you play it long enough, and like, okay, the newness of ramping, well, that may never wear off. That idea is, and I think that developers really have to balance having these gigantic maps with actually filling those maps with relevant content. I think a really good I think Far Cry 3, just going back to that, it was not the biggest map on the planet, but it was big enough, and it was robust enough in terms of the stuff within it, and there was random stuff happening, so it would trail over, as opposed to with Defiance and Red Faction Armageddon, it was relatively static for the most part, outside of enemies at times.
And I mean, that's what everybody talked about with Far Cry 3. Like, it was how dynamic the world actually was, and again, I think that speaks to the fact that game designers are going to have to design around density and the rules of their game world to keep us interested, because also, I mean, how many hours you put in Far Cry 3, by the end, you start to even see the formula there, and you're kind of only doing these same three things, but the fact that anytime you're going to, take over an outpost, that the wildlife could somehow get involved and completely change the situation. I mean, that aspect just kept us coming back, and was something I never expected from any of the early coverage of that game. Was it's like, how good's the story going to be? How entertaining are the missions going to be? What's the is it going to be fun to get around? You never expected these variables that they don't design around. It's all the game systems and the AI taking it over, and that's, if you can set up your open world to be fun no matter what happens in it. That's the genius of Far Cry 3, and that's why I think it'll stand out for a long time. And then, I think you nailed it with Red Faction Guerrilla, that the game was it was fun, but it was completely boring at the same time. It had some good highs, but its lows were just I couldn't get through it, and I think that's why also you and I were both excited for Red Faction Armageddon. It's like, oh, they're gonna focus it again, but they have this open world experience that they could make a pretty interesting world. And how that game ended up, I don't think there were other THQ factors involved, but I was surprised that you threw out Red Faction, since we actually liked that game.
But it's that was always a love-hate game for me, because if you can't, an open world it should be dynamic, it should be fun, but it should also still kind of steer you towards your overall objective. Now, whether you ignore that objective or not is one thing, but Red Faction Guerrilla wasn't always great about that, because the fun stuff wasn't necessarily the missions. Now, if you look at a Skyrim, for example, or a Fallout New Vegas, or a Fallout 3, they had all this stuff that you could do on the sides, but it tried to funnel you back towards where you were going. Far Cry 3 does it very well as well, because again, here's a mission objective. A lot of people, if you're like me, you kind of avoid those mission objectives, but that game kind of, it's kind of like a breadcrumb trail. It kind of leads you back into it, and that's cool. That's a tight experience. That's what you should do, because you don't want your player to get lethargic or to get bored of the world because they've already taken care of it. They want to be, your plot should be still pretty important, and I think, again, that's where the laziness comes into play in terms of the design side of things. Is, we have an open world, we're good, we're fine, they'll figure it out, and we're not. I mean, gamers,
we're past that now.
yeah. That's not gonna impress us anymore. We need a little bit more, and I think that will be, if Defiance has a downfall. Again, I'm still having fun with it, but I have fun with it in a very kind of standoffish way. Is the downfall of Defiance is going to be that whole feeling of been there, done that. and what's keeping me here, when there's other stuff going on.
I actually look at the first two Saints Row games, as those are kind of the examples I was going to of open world for the sake of open world. Piggybacking on, we can make a Grand Theft Auto also, like there's room in the market for this. And then by the end of 2, and honestly when 3 was coming out and everybody was kind of worried about the saturation of open world games, like do I want another Grand Theft Auto game? Because we just got another Grand Theft Auto game, and I did not like Grand Theft Auto 4 because it played it a little too straight for me. And
oh man, that game was a chore. Holy cow.
it was they had boiled it down to their formula, and it was like I can now see the lines of like where this game world ends, and it's no longer fun. And then
I was thinking along the same lines, like a prototype and a prototype 2, the same thing is that open world for being an open world, and you're just like, oh, it's fun to mash stuff around, and you're like, yeah, I'm done.
Yep,
I'm fine. I'll move on.
The borderline example in that, I still think Infamous was a little step beyond prototype, and it had some really cool powers that were well integrated in the world and is easy and fun to play. But I didn't go back for Infamous 2 because I was done. I got my fill, and which is always, I'm trying to think. I got pulled into Saints Row 3 just because of its ridiculousness, and it's still fun to this day. That is a game that is fun to just mess with. And then the reason I got into Skyrim, being not a fan of Elder Scrolls, I could not get into Oblivion, was all of the random stories that were coming out, especially some of the instances of people trying to fight the giants when they're trying to kill the mammoths. It's just hearing all these. It wasn't. I knew the game was dense story-wise and dense with its content, but just like the random stuff that also happened in the world, I was like, plus add in the dragons, like that filled in the barren spots of Oblivion that I couldn't get past. Like there were fun things to do and fun things to distract you along your way to doing your epic quest, and the epic quest was also entertaining. And I think those are the two prime. Well, I'd say our 3 prime examples right now: Skyrim, Saints Row 3, and Far Cry 3. With, I think they took the crown away from Just Cause 2 for me, because that was getting me through the generation for a long time, just with more of its aerial stuff. So I like these games to incorporate some more of the aerial aspects of Just Cause 2. But those are kind of my prime examples. Are there any games or franchises out there that you would like to see go open world a little bit, or even ones you'd like to see scale it back? You can go either way.
I've written about this. I'd love to see an open world Doom game. I love the idea of there's a scale to Doom that's been realized in a way, though Doom 3 kind of came back a little bit, made it a little bit tighter. But I would just love to see a world that's infested with the Doom creatures and kind of fighting your way through here and doing missions and doing that kind of stuff. And I wrote a pitch or something along those lines and just, like kind of talk through what I thought would be a good way to do it. Definitely would love to see a Resident Evil open world game. It's got enough potential for that. It's got enough, mythology to it. In terms of games that could maybe scale down a bit, man, that's a tough one. I think that I'd love to see someone take like the prototype, that character, that idea, and focus that into something halfway between survival, horror, and action, like a Dante's, or not. Well, I'm going to say Dante's Inferno, but that's a horrible example. But like a Devil May Cry or something along those lines is just to focus that a little bit more, because that was a bland ass environment once you got sick of it.
One of our games we both have a soft spot for that could have been so much better, and I think a supernatural type of open world game is begging to just a really standout one, like a AAA version of this. Maybe think of Hellgate London.
Yes.
And how demons and supernatural creatures need their sandbox, and somebody needs to needs to make that happen. It doesn't have to be Hellgate, but like,
Man, that was dude. I would put a lot of time into Hellgate, and I just love that idea. I loved demons, zombies, futuristic weapons and swords and shit. How do you mess that up?
How do you maybe that's Far Cry 3's next expansion is like a fucking secret world expansion.
I want an undead nightmare. Yeah, I was gonna say I want an undead nightmare in Far Cry 3. That's what I was thinking they were gonna do at first, because actually when you're playing that game, probably not a spoiler, but one of the hunting trophies you finally get is an undead bear. It looks more or less like a zombie bear, and I was like, oh shit, they're leading on to this. But with Blood Dragon, if they can turn a Blood Dragon around as quickly as they did, they can do a lot more stuff, and I think that may be what they do, and I hope that's what they do.
I mean,
so, okay, let's see what the next step is.
This just popped in my head, but I mean, what if those are the yearly releases? What if you make this game engine, and then instead of releasing Far Cry 4 or go Assassin's Creed with the damn thing, you release a $20 Blood Dragon, and next year is a $20 Supernatural game.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's much more diverse and entertaining for your fan base than, the other prime example of something I want to see limited again is the Assassin's Creed series, because the second selling point for me out of Assassin's Creed 3, outside of the Revolutionary War setting, was the open world wilderness in that game. But that was open world for the sake of being open world. Like, it just was not fun. There was no point to running around. It was fun to actually run around the treetops, but it was just like trying to find reasons to do it, or reasons to actually hunt these animals. Like, the stuff's all there, but there's nothing rewarding to this, especially compared to how Far Cry 3 integrated it. Like, those two hunting systems are the prime examples of open world done well and open world done for the sake of doing an open world, because we have this engine, and you need to design around that, or I think your franchise is going to get stale. And I think that's ultimately we've uncovered my issues with Assassin's Creed in this discussion.
No, it's just taking a break, and then you can experiment a little bit more. And again, I think it's a good way to create new franchises. If Blood Dragon does really well, just like we said, okay, can we do something with this? If not, we've probably done well. We've probably recouped more than enough money, because you got your engine. You're doing some reskinning. I mean, people give Blood Dragon, shit for being a reskin, but who cares? You're going to introduce new, gameplay to it. A new storyline. A reskin is not as offensive as I think people make it out to be, if it's a $15 DLC or a $20 expansion. A reskin. Now, if you look at Call of Duty, Call of Duties end up being, for the most part, reskins, and I'm not knocking Call of Duty at all, but I mean, if you look at that kind of direction to go in, they could do. I feel like they could be even more successful in a single player game, because a single player game can't get away with that kind of stuff, because it's a single player game. You don't have that multiplayer component of it. So just take that kind of idea and just kind of toy around with it. Have some fun a little bit to get your B team in and say, look, you guys, hey, mess around with this. Overhead's going to be relatively low. And just go with it. Do whatever you want, and we'll see what comes out of it. If it doesn't do well, we're not going to lose too much.
I mean, if they just called it what it is, and you had a $30 or I'll even give you a subscription-based or model for your multiplayer component that you keep iterating on yearly, and then you give us the $20 single-player game, because that's what you and I, when we cave in and buy a Call of Duty game, we're really trying to just buy the $20 to $40 single player experience. And
absolutely.
That was the other thing about Blood Dragon. They didn't price it at $60 or $40. They priced it at $20, which was, I think, just it's perfect. And I hope that people pay attention to it, and it could get lost in just the ridiculousness around the concept, and people thinking it might be a one-trick pony. But I think they're onto something as far as evolving the yearly franchise model, like in the DLC model that we've become pretty there are more misses than hits in the DLC model that we're used to. So
way more. I can't remember the last time I got excited about DLC. I really can't. And again, it's they can't. I don't think these companies are going to be able to afford to, push out big releases every year. I mean, some of the bigger ones will be able to, but people are scaling back. I mean, you got to find a different alternative. We talk about the free-to-play model and that kind of stuff. This is a different model in and of itself. It's a way to experiment with your core gameplay while not, kind of dipping out or, stepping out too far outside your comfort zone. And I think, hey, why not do it? Like that's going to be a good thing.
While we're in the military shooters realm, and I do want to get back to zombies because chat really wants to hear your thoughts on Resident Evil. But before we do that, I would like to see kind of more of an open world scenario for actual Battlefield. Like we have a lot of fun with PlanetSide 2, but I would like the modern military version of that to kind of see what that world looks like. And because PlanetSide 2 is awesome for what it is, and fuck, they're adding a three-seater buggy to the game, and I couldn't be more excited to.
The harassment buggy, yeah.
I asked Josh. I was like, "So how much money is too much money to spend on tricking out your buggy?" Because I would like to know.
Not enough.
But I would like to see a modern example of that has some. There are, there's a lot, World of Tanks and all that stuff that are more singularly focused, and they're trying to get all of the warfare stuff tied in, but like PlanetSide 2 for modern military I think would be pretty interesting. And maybe that's kind of what Respawn and Bungie are actually up to, but I still think they're taking more of that sci-fi edge, so I would like to see it grounded a little bit more. I think it'd be, because you look back at the original Battlefield 1942, and that was again one of the games that caught my attention just by the stories that people were telling of them fucking around in the game. They're not telling me about their kill-death ratio. They're telling me about, dude, you can, what was it? You would throw a grenade in the back of a buggy or one of the Jeeps and like send the Jeep across the map and into a group of soldiers, and it would blow up. Like that was so. I'd never heard of anything like that, and Halo had some of those aspects. Think of the original. I know you love Halo, but the original Halo sandboxes. I mean, that was one of the first times I can remember going to YouTube or going online to watch videos of people playing a game and just messing around. One of my favorite clips of all time is the guys that would rig up a Warthog and place a ton of grenades at its base to try to launch it over this mountain, and all of their attempts and failed attempts at that just entertained me for hours. And anybody that's played Halo with me knows that I don't really play the game. I just jump into the vehicles and cause trouble. So I don't remember where I was going with that, but a modern military open world game. That's what I was talking about. But let's get back to zombies. Resident Evil open world game, where, and I kind of tie in the lessons you've learned from your time with DayZ and the War Z, because I'm kind of curious, what is a zombie open world game? What would make it a good one? Like, what did Dead Rising do wrong? That kind of stuff.
So the one thing that, and I'll start with what I think the War Z did wrong when I eventually just kind of got tired of it, is again, you got into that blandness of, I'm surviving, but for what? What's the point?
Yeah.
For me, a Resident Evil open world game should be focused on the single player aspect of it, like a Skyrim or whatnot, but have that maybe 4 players could play it, but not too much. I don't want a gigantic MMO of Resident Evil, because you still have to have it focused.
You have to have the survival aspects. Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, again, I'm looking at, you've got a town, okay, and I actually have thought about this in my head. Is you've got a town, and it begins you as whoever you want to be. You pick up whatever character you want to be, and you're in the town before anything happens, and then slowly things start to build up, and so you have this like progression of time that like, oh, things are getting worse, things are getting bad, and then suddenly like, oh shit, now we're in like the world of Resident Evil surviving and whatnot, and just kind of taking it from there and kind of trying to make your way through it, but without the over-the-top action type stuff. I think there's a happy medium. I actually think, as much shit as people give me about Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, that was actiony, but it was not as stupid actiony as like a Resident Evil 6 was. That made more sense because you were soldiers. You obviously you can fight a little bit better without it being too stupid, and I think that's probably a pretty good level to have it at, because survival horror experience. It also maybe giving people the option. Maybe you're not a soldier in the game. Maybe you're just a school teacher, and you're just kind of trying to make your way around, kind of like what the Resident Evil Online games did, or the Resident Evil Outbreak games did. But again, kind of play your own tale. Are you hiding? Or are you taking it to the mutants and whatnot? And I think I like that idea of things. I would also love to go back to Raccoon City. I'd love to find a way to be able to take my time exploring Raccoon City, because any time that you're given the chance to be in Raccoon City, you're rushing around. You're on that rail.
What do you think your motivating factor is to explore?
And I think there's a number of things you can do with it. It could be a situation where now shit. I don't know. Like, do you want to escape, or are you trying to save people? You're looking for someone. Your wife and kids are missing. You could go with any of those things, but I think, that whole aspect of the War Z that was boring to me was your motivation was finding more stuff. You use that stuff, you lose that stuff, you find more stuff. Maybe you're rebuilding Raccoon City. Let's take it out of the canon. Okay, maybe your whole goal is
to clear it out.
Let's clear it out. Let's rebuild. Let's rebuild as things continue to attack. Raccoon City has to live a new day. You
can get your Sim City involved. I'm kidding, but kind of.
There's those games that do that kind of. Okay. So look at Far Cry 3. We're gonna keep going back to this because you did a really good job.
It's
the outposts. You clear out the outpost. You have control of that outpost. Along those lines, you clear out all the zombies and stuff, but then you have to build it up. Get your supplies going, and defend it as it goes, and then you go from there. And then you're recruiting people and whatnot, but also doing the Fallout 3 type little quest and whatnot, and just doing your thing. That could be fucking awesome. That would be great. Or you could just do a pure single player type experience, or shit, throw people into a War Z, or not a War Z. I'm not going to use an example, a DayZ, but instead of just zombies, you've got everything that Resident Evil's ever thrown at you. You've got T-virus, G-virus, C-virus, Code Veronica virus, all the different creatures from all those different walks of life coming at you from all different angles.
Oh shit! So the the wildlife of Far Cry 3 integrated into Raccoon City, except they're all the various Resident Evil creatures.
So your T-virus elephant. Your G-virus elephant.
Well, that's DayZ. Now you're getting into DayZ.
Now that's DayZ. But you know what I'm saying? It's just all this stuff happening, and oh god, what's next? That's awesome. That kind of shit's cool. People love that kind of stuff. I think people will get into that. But will they do it? I don't know. I think they have to do something different, because I enjoyed my time with Resident Evil 6, but it still was a funnel. It still was a bland funnel at times.
That'd be kind of neat. I don't know. I still think there's something to what Dust and EVE Online are trying to do, but all I kept thinking was, I don't know of a gamer that's going to enjoy both aspects of the action side of the Far Cry 3 Resident Evil open world experience, and then the building up the town side. But I think if those were somehow talking to each other, that some people will like one over the other, and if you get that extra layer that what was that game that Josh played, where basically the commander had the strategy view and is giving orders to these groups of soldiers to basically say, oh shit, there's a tyrant outbreak in this area of the city or whatever, and trying to block off and keep the other areas safe while you're taking care of business. I think
it's an expanded natural selection.
Natural selection. That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
Because they're I think that's the other problem. Like I said, these games need to be designed around density and the rule set of their open world, but there are layers that you can go to. The problem is when games try to do all of them, they never do any of them well, and I think they excel. Like, if you just make this, I don't know, trifecta of Resident Evil open world games that you've got your soldier game, you've got your scientist game, I don't know what that game is, but it made sense in my head, and then you're kind of like, City Planner. Please call it Resident Evil City Planner. Raccoon City Planner.
Resident Evil Tycoon, yeah.
But I think, I don't know how logical it would be for all those to work, but I guess all I'm saying is make sure you know, if you're doing the soldier game, just do the soldier game right. Your goal is to clear out the city and and stop uprisings. Don't worry about the second you get into the SimCity side of that. You know, the game will probably collapse within itself, and it'll also never come out. Like one of the examples I was going to use of, you know, some sandboxes that I like, but ultimately a failed sandbox was the Black and White series. That was a game I hated to actually play the game, but just like to play God and mess with my monkey, that was a lot of fun. And like ruin these people's lives, or, you know, have them praise me. That was fulfilling, but I couldn't get very many missions deep into that. And you know, hell, ultimately a lot of Lionhead Studios games had that problem. I couldn't get into any Fable but 2 because that was the most focused one that actually had a fun adventure elements to it, and they kind of reeled in some of their more grandiose ideas. Versus 3 again tried to do too much, and 1 tried to do too much and forgot to make the game fun. Because that's the other side. You start focusing on all the heavy stuff. Make sure that gameplay is fun. And I'm glad, though, going back to your Resident Evil game, I'm glad you made that game. I think you made that fun. I was worried you were going to turn it into you know, the Walking Dead game. Like, how does it still remain Resident Evil? And I think that's kind of funny. We've both in recent years come around the fact that Resident Evil has the action side to it, and be that soldier or that, you know, that survivor that is actually helping clear out these horrible mutations, and that could be kind of cool. So I don't know if we have room now for our ultimate sandbox experience, because you might have nailed yours with Resident Evil, but kind of looking over our list here, I want to start kind of going over our favorite features of some of the major games we've talked about. Like our favorite features of, say, Far Cry 3. It seems like we're going back to the wildlife.
Is there anything else? Dynamic aspect of it. I mean, I think that overall, like, gunplay was great in that. Like, there's the thing. If your world's gigantic, make sure it's fun to shoot guns. I love Fallout 3, love Fallout New Vegas. Combat, Far Cry 3, yeah. Every time I fought, that was awesome. So
and fire.
Dynamic, and make sure your fire works.
Fire. Make sure you have a bow.
You know, I think
this is a 2013 lesson. I think, though.
It is. You have to have a bow, and it has to have, you know, interchangeable arrows in it. But another thing, in a very minor way, because I don't think we're at that point in technology that everything can be destroyed, but a few things. Let's see a little bit. You know what I mean? That's definitely something that I kind of want to put into an open world game. Is I want to be able to see something explode and actually it look like it exploded, as opposed to just have that layer of smoke and fire and then it's still okay. You know, a little bit of destruction, not too much though.
Yeah, you don't want to go.
Can't go Bad Company 2. Not on an open world, a huge open world game. It's just too tough. You know.
I wonder if there can be. I love destruction though. Like,
I do too. No, Mercenaries handled it well. Actually, Mercenaries handled it really well because, but it took you out of the realism of the world. So then you have to make that sacrifice, because every time you rebooted Mercenaries, whatever buildings you blew
the permanence
up would be back. I mean, there's no, absolutely no object permanence to it. So, I don't know. There's a happy medium with that, but I don't think that makes or breaks a game if it doesn't have destruction. I think if the other stuff.
No, yeah. I mean, because I get really mad at games that don't have destruction, but also don't have interesting environments or worlds. You know, it's just like, I don't know, I look at the repetitiveness of the Defiance world, and it's just like, I might as well be able to destroy all this stuff. It's halfway there. Like, it's not interesting to look at. So you got to go either or. But man, if you could, it's tough to pull. It's tough to pull off destruction because you could just screw up the game world. Yeah. And if you could make that fun, which I think would be the next great sandbox advancement, if you could make destruction enjoyable, but also that the game adapts well to the risk rewards around it. Like, you took over this base, but you also destroyed it, so now your base sucks.
Yeah,
because
that's always something I always wondered about that. Like, you look at a game like Grand Theft Auto and Saints Row 3, and it is like, what if there's some sort of penalty to all the destruction, you know? So then you have to decide, and you have that chaos meter and the, you know, good, bad, or the morals of things or whatnot. But like, okay, how do you go about this? And is this going to be an impact? Do you kill somebody that is not going to be able to give you quests later? I mean, I kind of like those aspects of things. I like to know that I can screw my game up. I guess maybe that's something that I like. Like, I like to know that I need to think about my decisions that I'm going to make. If I'm playing Skyrim or Fallout and I go and just murder everybody, I want to have it in the back of my mind that there's some sort of reason not to do that and to really think about it, because if not...
Skyrim does that well.
Yeah, it does it absolutely well, because I remember I think I assassinated somebody because of a mission and found out that I missed out on a mission as a result of that. And that's definitely something that you have to do.
So, man, that could be tough. I started thinking, like, penalties for bad choices from Skyrim, like, throw that into Saints Row.
Well, yeah, you'd be in jail the whole time.
If you could, but yeah, you got to find the right balance for it, because you want to keep it fun. I mean, maybe it's just as easy, honestly, and this might be a cop out, but having basically a sandbox switch in your game that, like, you know, I can go into fuck around mode and not worry that I'm making any long-term damage to this world, and then go back to your save state. Like, you don't. I mean, honestly, that's how I play those games. Like, I'm either doing a multiplayer session of Saints Row, or even when I booted up Just Cause 2 by myself, it's just like, I'm gonna go fuck things up versus I'm sitting down here to play I'm gonna play through the missions. I want to get through the story. I'm gonna be focused. So I think that would make a lot of sense if you could somehow turn that off. Anything else from Skyrim? I would say just the expanse of the land, just because there's the exploration is what draws me to those games. Same thing with Fallout.
Yeah, the cities have to be something that you want to visit, you know.
What I want is the density of Far Cry 3 with the map size of Skyrim. Just make that happen real quick. We're asking for both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Okay, all of military vehicle games. You need to have fun ways to get around.
A lot of options.
Let's see. What do you take from... Is Grand Theft Auto doing anything for you these days?
No, I'm watching that trailer. I ho-hummed the whole time. Grand Theft Auto 4 was just such a bland experience for me. I need something out of you know, that's just like real life to me. Like, Grand Theft Auto is just real life stuff. You know, I need something a little bit more over the top. So, I mean, that's another thing. Like, I want a world that's interesting to be in. I don't just want a city. I want something that, you know, makes me want to explore a little bit. I like things to be, you know, a little bit more realistic, but not to the point that I'm like, oh wow, it's a brick building. That's neat. Okay, see ya.
What about pulling in any of your Call of Duty single-player experience stuff?
Explosions. No, I mean, but your storyline, like with these, like you want to have a little bit of fun, and I think those, I mean, people knock them all the time, but I like that Hollywood feel to it every once in a while. You know, I like those big... you can have set-piece battles in your open world. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having those Michael Bay moments every once in a while, because that helps pacing. It really does. Because if you don't have those moments... I think Far Cry 3, again, we're going to go back to it, did a pretty good job with that. They included it, and it worked.
JP, Tom's SLP. Well, we need to come up with a nickname for him so I can say that easier. Kind of mentions the fact that a lot of these open world games, you are pretty much just outdoors. But, like, I think getting your focused or single player missions, you into buildings or into isolated areas, so you can have those milestone moments or those those kind of epic Call of Duty moments. Having that option, and also I think Saints Row did that well with all of a sudden you're inside the computer and doing like little offshoot games. Having those options and realizing we're gonna want some of those integrated as well. Like, I forget what they're called in Skyrim, like hunting those. They're not druids. What were they called? Like the princes of.
Oh, the dragon priests.
I think so. Is that right?
Yeah.
But just they do a good job of kind of having these isolated stories within their big world. I think that is huge.
Absolutely.
Let's see if JPT. I like it. Thank you. We'll use that next time. Got to give a nod to earlier in chat. They were talking about XCOM as far as our strategy layer. And I think the biggest thing I'm taking from tonight is I want some science fiction in my open world games, and I think Blood Dragon kind of teases it a little bit, or a lot of it, depending on how you're looking at it. Because everything is about modern guns and exploding things, so that would be a nice twist. And your zombie game would be good too. So
and throw in and just like in Blood Dragon, I mean it's they threw in the dragons. They didn't really even need to. I think it would have been even okay without.
Oh, absolutely.
In it, but hey, that's awesome. That's a cool scene, and I've seen some cool scenes with them involved. So yeah,
well, I mean,
those big creatures, man. I love big creatures. The dragons from Skyrim, awesome. It's just like makes you realize how big the world you are.
I mean that session, that creative session around that idea had to have been like, what if you're off doing your Thieves Guild mission and it's a big pivotal moment and a fucking dragon shows up. I mean, let's make our world do that. And make him look like Macho Man. I don't think that came up, but cool. I think we fixed the future of sandbox games. So I thank you for your assistance, and also I think Capcom will be sending a check your way for actually compiling a pretty decent Resident Evil open world experience. So. Oh my God! We failed because we didn't mention Dragon's Dogma. You better have some fucking cool ass enemies that you can climb on for no reason.
You have to be able to climb on your enemies, whether your enemy is a goat or a mech, or even like an animal.
Sorry, Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah, we're sorry, guys.
No, all that says is make your combat interesting and have some variety to it. From all aspects, from ranged to close combat. So, and make it wonky, and give me a character creator where I can make Mr. Dave. That is rule number one.
Key.
As we've been saying it all night, except we haven't said it all until right now, but it is the most important point.
That's what everyone knew. That's what we meant, I think, when we were talking about all that stuff.
Make people throwable. Also a great idea for DM.
No, you got it. Anything else? Chat. Anything else?
What the hell?
Cow's humpable. Hey,
JPT will have to come back to sports games. He's thrown out the idea, what if in GTA you could get drafted to a baseball team and play?
There will be a day, because think about mini games now. Think about mini games. There's some extreme examples of mini games. I mean, at Saints Row, they have racing games within them.
Well,
there will be a day when you are playing Saints Row or what, Grand Theft Auto or whatever, you get drafted and you could play the rest of the time like a baseball player,
I mean, we didn't get into the MMOs too much, but that's what I always thought about whenever we would say job systems. I think it was the Star Wars game that if you were the musician or the entertainer or whatever it was, you could actually spend your time just hanging out at the bar and making your money that way, and that was just kind of always bizarre to me that you could have a little job within this world. But yeah, if you could be a baseball player in GTA, I don't know what I would think about that, but that I would hope that developer on that team would make a baseball game later in his life rather than being trapped within GTA. That's kind of funny. What the JPT? It's full of ideas. We're gonna get out of here with HorribleNight.com updates, but everybody in chat, you guys have been a blast. Thanks for contributing here. The biggest focus for us right now is getting our streaming schedule up on our Twitch channel and also on our website. So we're coming up with different live show ideas and trying to get our game nights sorted out. Ethan and I are just about locked into what our streaming schedule will be, and then you'll start to see the other Horrible Night personalities also streaming. They are interested. Be on the lookout for Cole and I's podcasts in next week. We will have some multiplayer game nights and some community game nights related to that. And then Ethan's streaming a couple times during the week. I'm doing the same. Let us know what you think of our game selection. I'll definitely always looking for feedback there because we're also playing for you. So hit us up, contact form, or in chat while we're playing. We're always looking at chat while we are playing, and that's pretty much the focus. We did have last weekend. We had some rough downtime with the site, but I do believe we got to the root of the issue, and that the site is now speedier and more secure. We made a lot of upgrades to our web host, so hopefully you'll start to see benefits of that. But if you notice anything wonky on the site, don't be afraid to hit us up on the contact form because we can't catch everything, and we try to keep this site. We want to stay up as long as it can. So, but apologies for the delay. Thanks for the patience, and hopefully Monaco distracted you enough from the fact that the website wasn't up. Next week, Josh will return to the show, and we will have another episode of Super Gaming Best Friends. Ethan will be back, and the Horrible Show will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, Ethan, thanks for hanging out.
Yeah, thank you.
Chat, thanks again. We'll see you next time.